It is said that good habits are the key to all success, whilst bad habits are the unlocked door to failure. Well, today we're going to review the 14 worst habits that can lead to financial failure and will keep you poor. Welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Sam Webster Harris. Let's just jump right into it. And the first bad habit is starting tomorrow. Not realizing that tomorrow never comes, always wanting more from right now, and just not being aware of the fact that you're never going to do things tomorrow. If you're not capable of starting something now, you're not going to get it started. The best way to get started is to quit talking and start doing, which is why I've jumped straight into these lists of bad habits. And now if you've got that first bad habit, you got to stop it by doing stuff. And let's go into number 2, starting too many things and not finishing any of them. The opposite of problem number 1 is that you just start lots of projects. You're just constantly getting excited. You love making lists, making to-do items, planning things and never actually doing them, and definitely never finishing them. I'm not going to lie. I do some of this myself, but it's really important when you start things to actually work out how much time it's going to take and how long it will take to get any good at it before you can start reaping the rewards of a project or a skill. Because it's so exciting to just keep on learning new things and doing stuff, but there's no point if you're never actually going to benefit from them. And the other thing is that you'll start too many things and then you just won't learn the lessons from the mistakes because you'll already be jumping on ahead of yourself before you've even worked out what you could have learned from it. So not finishing things and not learning from your mistakes is the second bad habit that will keep you poor. Number 3, paying yourself last. Now, this is a great example from the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the idea is that there are 2 ways of paying yourself. The poor person way is by paying all of your bills first, going through the month, letting anything else that you need to pay for get paid for through the month, and then getting to the end of the month and finally adding whatever's left to your savings. And of course, there isn't anything left to put in your savings because of things happen, money gets spent when it's there. The other way of paying yourself is to pay yourself first. As soon as your paycheck comes in, put some of it into savings, always know that it's there, and then whatever money is left, use that to pay your bills, and then work out what expenses you might allow yourself for the rest of the month and different things you might do. And it works out and you'll still get to the end of the month without any money left, but you'll already have paid yourself. And so you're always making savings. So the key here is to just treat savings like one of your bills. You just have to pay it and you have to pay it first before anything else happens. And a good idea is to put a minimum of 10% of your income into a savings account straight away when you get paid to stop this from happening. Number 4, not investing in yourself. Now, this means developing new skills, focusing on your own education, and really becoming better, because a really good example is from Alex Hormozi, who says, the only reason you're not a billionaire is because you don't know how to become a billionaire. And if you look at billionaires, some of them have lost all their money and become a billionaire again within 1 or 2 years because they know the route to get there. And so just investing in your education, learning useful high value skills like Google Ads or building a website, these things that can block people from success, just learn them. So much stagnation in your career growth and lack of opportunities for higher pay just comes from not knowing stuff. And as soon as you just realize what the things are that you might need to know, learn them. Now, number 5, again, kind of conflicts with the last point, and this is reading lots of books and never doing anything. Now, this could also be listening to podcasts and just constantly educating yourself with never actually putting anything into practice. Because education, of course, is essential, but over-educating is just procrastinating. And we all know people that are constantly reading self-help books, but don't ever seem to be able to help themselves, or constantly learning things that they're not using. The point here is, back with the first point that I made, is starting first. So if you want to start a business, reading books endlessly about starting a business won't start a business for you. Just start a business and then educate yourself on whichever problem you have. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's employing people, maybe it's Google Ads. Start and then learn what it is that you need as you're doing. And that's the key way to actually make progress and keep going with stuff rather than just educating yourself before you ever start. Now, number 6, not knowing your income or your expenses. As a student, I maybe went too far on this, but it did mean that I doubled my money every year from when I was 16 to when I was 25, which became quite a lot of money. And I basically tracked every single expense. I knew how much money I spent on alcohol. That was also how much money I spent on alcohol in the shop, how much money in bars, how much money in restaurants. Everything that I was spending, I worked out. And I just knew how much of a budget I needed for the sort of lifestyle that I wanted, or how to make changes to my lifestyle to fit my budget and still carry on making the amount of savings that I wanted to be making to invest in the things that were more important to me, like travel and business. So really understanding how much money is coming into your account in different ways, whether that is your income or other investments that you have, and then where all those money is going seems really obvious, but it's actually never what you think it is. And what you have in your head is the ideal concept of where your money is going. And it's not actually reality. So it's much better to look at the hard facts of what you spent last week than what you think you spend in a week. Because you probably haven't counted in the fact like you go to the cinema, or sometimes it's a friend's birthday, sometimes it's a friend's stag do, and just things that are actually quite expensive that they come up every month, every week, that you don't factor into your normal week of like, okay, cool, I've got my flat bills, going to go to the restaurant once in a week for a date, that kind of thing. You just don't have everything aware. So be fully aware of everything you're going to spend. Then you'll actually be able to think about what you're actually going to be able to save or not. And then you can start making things like a budget and actually sticking to them. Number 7. Now this one is absolutely terrible. And that is getting comfortable with bad debts. Like we spoke about paying yourself first, getting comfortable with bad debts is the opposite of that. That's spending tomorrow's money before you've even got it. So that's paying yourself even later, because tomorrow you'll have to start like paying off the debts that you had from today before you can then pay yourself the day after that. So this is the worst thing, because getting into bad debts can just ruin your credit and ruin your ability to save for years and years. So if you start maxing out your credit card and that's on like a 22%, maybe 40% interest rate, you're paying crazy amounts each month just to keep that credit card at the same level. You're not even paying off your debt at this point. I've had a lot of friends get into this point and it's crippling. Like I was there paying off a mortgage, which is like a better type of debt. I was earning a house with my money, whereas they were just paying to keep their bad loans in the same place that they were. And I was like in my 20s and just watching my friends stuck under this burden of debt, whereas I was like buying houses and growing my wealth. Obviously, I tried to help them as much as I could, and I'm really proud of myself that I did. But the worst thing you can do is get into credit card debt or take on loans that just have high interest rates and be spending tomorrow's money today. So always avoid using debt to buy things that you can't afford to buy using cash. I'm talking about car, home improvements, all these things where there's someone selling you a debt to do this because they're going to make money off your debt and you're going to lose money. And that's just shit for your wealth. Right. Number 8. Not having an emergency fund. Emergencies are unexpected events, but they happen. And things like losing a job, a pandemic, unexpected expenses such as medical bills, these things that actually maybe cost a lot and you just don't know when they're going to happen. Now, appear out of the blue, they probably won't happen most years, but sometimes they come across and they're going to require quite a lot of money. Now, let's say you do have some good debt like a mortgage, but you don't have any extra cushion in an emergency fund. If you suddenly have to pay out 6 months worth of your wage for something and you don't have that money and you now can't afford to pay your mortgage loans, you're going to lose your entire house and possibly all of your wealth because you haven't got an emergency fund. So it's crucial to have an emergency fund so that you're not forced to sell things. Let's say like the COVID pandemic comes and like all your stocks and shares go down and then you have like some kind of medical bill and you have to pay a lot of money. You have to sell all your stocks and shares whilst they're at their lowest point. And that's the time when you should be investing money. And again, it just makes you poor. So the idea of an emergency fund is that you have ideally 6 months at least of normal living expenses available to you so that you can deal without having a job if you lose it, etc. And this stops you from having to sell things or being made bankrupt by bad situations in life. Now, number 9, lifestyle inflation. Again, I've seen this happen to lots of people. This is where, as your income increases, your spending increases to match your income. So you still don't make any savings, and you suddenly get stuck in this loop of having to spend lots of money all the time, which will also stop you from getting an emergency fund because you're still spending all your money. And it means that the amount that you're spending each month is going up so much that when an emergency comes along, you have much bigger problems because you're trying to pay for some really expensive mansion that you don't need, or holidays, and just supporting a whole lifestyle that has ballooned and you haven't got any savings to actually match the lifestyle that you're living. Now, part of this lifestyle inflation that really happens because the people that you're around will be spending more money because, you get a better job, you're around people with better jobs who spend more money doing fancy holidays and fancy gym subscriptions with their fancy bikes or whatever. And you just pay for all the things that they're also paying for. And you don't need to. I mean, if you're happy with the phone you have, you don't need the latest phone. If you're happy with the bike you've got, you don't need an amazing bike, etc. Now, it's great to treat yourself and have nice things, but it's really important to be aware of what are the things you actually need and what are the things that genuinely make you happy, versus what are the things you're doing just to like keep up with the Joneses and look like other people? Because there's probably a lot of things you don't need to be spending money on because of your lifestyle inflation. And ultimately, if you're spending lots of money and you're not saving any, you're still poor and you're going to have nothing when something bad happens. And so this is a really important one to avoid. Right, time for a quick ad break, and stay tuned to find out the other strategies that will just crush your ability to make money. And leads on to our next one, which is number 10, hanging around with the wrong crowd. So obviously there's the example I just had of if you're making some money, you're hanging around with people that are also making money and like you have lifestyle inflation. There are even worse versions of this, such as you don't have much money, but you're hanging around with rich people. And so you try to spend money like them and you just end up going into debt straight away. Genuinely, this happens to a lot of people and it's crushing because you just end up with lots of debts that all your friends don't have because they are actually rich. And this makes you even more poor trying to pretend to be rich. And this is why I really get annoyed with the whole like mindset of, oh, just act like these people and then it'll happen. Like if you just spend money like a rich person and you're not rich, you will become even poorer. So that's super dumb. Trust me. Now, some other types of people that you wouldn't want to hang around with are, if you're poor, you shouldn't be taking advice from poor people on how to get rich because they don't know how to get rich and they are poor probably for a reason. And any advice from them is just going to keep you poor. So listening to poor people on how to get rich is really unhelpful. And they're probably also going to drag you down when you start being successful. Another problem is your partner, because if you have a spouse that makes you feel guilty for working hard or being successful, it's always going to stop you from doing as well as you could do because for whatever reason, they might have some problems, but they should be celebrating your success and helping you and also thinking of ways they could do better instead of feeling guilty that they're not doing as well as you and then making you feel guilty for doing well. And again, why the whole point of hanging around with people who are the wrong crowd for your success is something you shouldn't do. Now, linking onto that is number 11, blaming your circumstances instead of taking responsibility. Because even if you are with the wrong crowd, you can change the crowd you're in and you can act differently. But if you just blame them for all your problems, you're never going to solve them. And in general in life, blaming your circumstances instead of accepting them and taking ownership to improve them will always keep you unsuccessful and will keep you poor because it's easy to blame the world, but it's very hard to fix things. So always focus on fixing things instead of blaming things. That simple. Number 12, focusing purely on saving. Now this sounds a bit backwards compared to the advice of save as much as you can, but this is the point, is that we're always told to keep saving and savings are the most important thing. But that's one of the things that stops you from ever making meaningful amounts of money, is that you're just focused on what's happening in your savings account and you're not thinking of ways to make more money, such as additional income streams, and you're waiting too long to invest your money into ways that it could make more money. And you're not thinking about the skills that you need to learn to actually double the income that you have, because you're just thinking about how to save each month. And it just can be something that you obsess on too much and will keep you poor compared to actually thinking about ways to become richer. This leads on to number 13 about investing and not having a strategy to invest. Because if you just focus on your savings account, that's going to get an interest rate that's pretty low. Now, interest rates have been going all over the place lately, but last year, savings accounts were literally like 0.5%. Now they're like 3%, but inflation is currently 10%. So you're still losing like 7% of your money each year that your money is in a savings account. And that's horrible, especially if you're focusing on just putting money into your savings account. So you actually need to think about how to invest that into different things. So maybe it's cryptocurrencies, maybe that's a terrible idea. That's not what I'm going to talk about here. The point is to just think about different ways to invest your money. Stock market, property, things that can put your money to work and grow it in a diversified way, because of the other issue around not having a strategy for investing is just hearing about a good thing, putting all your money into it, and then that thing disappearing. Because firstly, most things that sound too good to be true are. And secondly, even if it's like actually quite a safe thing, having all your money in one sort of asset is a massive risk. And so it makes sense to have some like high risk money somewhere, but not have all of your money there. And it makes sense to have some in like very safe things such as like cash and gold, and just really be across the board in a way that's safe, that's definitely growing things, but also isn't going to disappear if a few things mess up, which does happen in the world as we are seeing lately. Finally, onto the last bad habit, and that is waiting for the perfect conditions. Because waiting is the opposite of doing, and perfect is the opposite of action. So the best way to do nothing at all is to wait for things to be perfect. And ultimately, there's never a perfect time to start building your wealth. And the way that you start might not be a perfect way of doing things. Sure, there's always going to be a bunch of things on each month and things that are getting in the way, such as hen do's, stag do's, people's birthdays, university, whatever. Things that are taking your money and makes it hard to start investing. And you just have to start doing it. And the other thing that I mean here is that it won't be perfect straight away, as in, yeah, you might want to be saving £1,000 a month or $10,000 a month. But the first thing to do might be starting by saving $5 a week or something really small that seems not perfect, but it's better than nothing. And of course, the adage of a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. It's okay to start small. Everything starts small. You don't have to start like huge and be saving like millions straight away. The point is to start and improve as you're going. And on that, I'll round up with the first quote, which was, "The way to get started is to quit talking and start doing. So it's time for me to quit talking and let you start doing." Thank you for listening. This has been the Growth Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a rating and let us know what you think. Please send us any questions you have at growthmindsetpodcast@gmail.com. And remember, if you want to enjoy your life, that starts with enjoying today. So be nice to yourself and be nice to someone else too. Thank you so much for listening.
Go you!
Your consistency to reach the end of an episode is legendary.
My hero!
But when we learn things, it's important to reflect. So I politely invite you to take a pause, rifle through the biggest ideas you just heard. So here's your opportunity to hit pause and have a think. Okay, did you wrestle with some insights? Information doesn't stick when we race from one podcast to the next without using our brain to play with the knowledge. So here's another go at a pause. Alrighty, I'll let you off to continue with your life now. If you have any ideas or feedback for the show, I'm always interested to hear from you.
You're the best!
And other than that, please stay curious. Curious. Growth. Smiling for no reason.